Bonjour à toutes et tous. Hello everybody from Quebec City. À 2 pas de chez moi se trouve le boisé de Tequendé, qui est un lieu de rassemblement des peuples autochtones dans la région de Québec. Et je me trouve aussi dans la région où on a les Hurons-Wendat. Donc, je voudrais reconnaître que nous sommes sur des terres traditionnelles et non cédées des Hurons-Wendat et nous les remercions de partager ces terres avec nous. I'm pleased to open the 2020 RSC Celebration of Excellence and Engagement. This is going to be an exhilarating and busy week. It demands a short and precise introduction. Allons-y. Je m'appelle Guy Laforêt, je suis le directeur général de l'ENAP et membre de l'Académie des sciences sociales de la Société royale du Canada. I'm also the past president of the Federation for the Humanities and the Social Sciences and a board member of l'ACFAS, l'Association de la recherche en langue française au Canada. The University of Toronto is the presenting partner for this year's COEE. Among the activities of our week is a symposium organized by the U of T on the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin. We express our deep gratitude to the U of T and indeed to all our partners for this week. And you can find the complete list of our partners on page 15 of our annual report. Depuis 1883, la Société royale du Canada représente un principe d'espoir pour un avenir meilleur au Canada et partout dans le monde. Elle remplit son mandat avec succès dans la mesure où elle reconnaît l'excellence et invite ses membres à faire avancer sensiblement les connaissances, la compréhension et la réflexion en collaboration avec la société. Although, unfortunately, we cannot meet in person through the crucible of 2020, it is more urgent than ever that we share insights about pressing issues for all of us. We are delighted that nearly 1,500 people, colleagues, friends, and members from Canada and around the world are with us this week. We shall hear more than 200 speakers in our sessions with remarks from 80 new fellows and 50 new members of the college. You can register for additional activities throughout the week. Nous espérons que vous serez nombreuses et nombreux à le faire. Notre premier atelier vous donnera une idée de la réponse institutionnelle de la SRC à la pandémie de la COVID-19. Nos panélistes vous démontreront la richesse de la mobilisation de notre communauté, faisant appel à une pluralité de disciplines et de générations. But before our first panel, let me invite Elder Clayton Shirt to address this week's proceedings. He is a counselor and traditional native healer. He is also a first-degree member of the Three Fires Medieval Wind Lodge. Elder Shirt, la parole est à vous.
Well, thank you, Miigwech, my brother. Good morning to my relatives, to all of you. They asked me to come and do a traditional opening. So with the traditional opening, just say this. Wherever you are in cyberspace, when you come back, wherever you are, we just come with many views. I'll just point out 4. There is that traditional, there's that spiritual view, there is that agnostic view, there is that atheist view, there is that religious view. Whatever view you came with one of them and many others. We can all agree on this one thing, that we are the people, that we are the human beings. And so traditionally, put things into context, Anishinaabe people of all these gathered, when they gathered, and when any kind of thing they gathered, and they acknowledged this in a circle. So the idea is we're all in this virtual circle as the people. We come together, and so then the traditional person, the elder, the knowledge keeper would say an opening prayer, and to acknowledge who we are as the people before we're anything else. What I mean by that is our race, our gender, our class, our citizenship, our age. Nothing wrong with those identities. It's just we always identify as the people, the human beings, before we're anything else. And that's our way of doing this. So I really want to thank the people who asked me to come in here and to do this traditional opening. And I know it's a challenge. It is. We are in challenging times. very difficult times, but we come together as the people and we say a few words and we just say an opening prayer. So I encourage you to take a moment or two and just send your thoughts, send your hearts, your prayers to whoever you pray to. We come together, acknowledge this, that great respect for all ways of life. As Anishinaabe people, we've always done this. So when the settlers came, we told this to them in the beginning. You have your way of life, we have ours. We go down the river of life together. And somewhere along the line in the history of Canada, that has sort of been forgotten. There is a dark chapter in Canadian history, and unfortunately, so many people don't know this. And so I am not an educator, but I had to become an educator. And so many Anishinaabe people have had to become educators, the artists. Everyone has had to do this to educate the public on this dark chapter of Canadian history. But with that, we come together and let's talk and share and have this conversation in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, to recognize this and to have this conversation, to go forward and to heal. And it takes courage now. It takes tremendous courage to do this as human beings. My bone, my flesh, my blood is the liquids, minerals of the earth. Human. That's where our human comes from. The being comes from our relationship to the sun, sky, universe. All things of the earth have being. The form is different, but we come together as the human beings. It means something to us. That's our first identity of who we are. Anishinaabe, translation into English, that's what it means. The people, the human beings. So we humble ourselves as human beings and we give thanks for who we are as the people. We come together and we say, Miigwech, thank you to our first mother of all mothers, our mother, the earth. We acknowledge her. We say thank you to everything she provides for us, the people and our relatives, the four-leggeds, the crawlers, the swimmers, the flyers. We give thanks to our first mother of all mothers, our mother, the earth. We acknowledge her. We pray to her. We pray for her. We give thanks to her. So our minds now can be one with this. We say Miigwech. We say thank you. So we look to Father Sky, that spirit world. We say thank you to our ancestors. We partition, we ask our ancestors, those good ones, to be with you, to be with me, to be with us in these difficult, challenging times as the people, to have pity on us that we have forgotten this simple thing, who we are as the people. We ask the spirits of our ancestors to bless us physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to give us strength in these difficult, challenging times, to come together as the people, to put our minds together, our hearts together. We plead with them to help us in a good way, in a kind way. We say Miigwech to them. So our minds and our hearts can be one with this. We say Miigwech. We say thank you. We give thanks to the sun, grandfather of all grandfathers, for giving the appearance of rising in that eastern doorway, for bringing a new day, a new beginning for us, for bringing warmth, for making things grow for us, the people, and our relatives. In gratitude, we say Miigwech for this new day, this new beginning. We come together in this morning and give gratitude. We give thanks for this day. And if we have done anything in the past wrong, we have this moment, this day to correct it, to go forward with gratitude. We say Miigwech to grandfather, son. So our minds, our hearts can be one with this. We say Miigwech. We say thank you to Nukamis, grandmother of all grandmothers. Again, I pray to you. I pray for you. In gratitude, Nukamis, you are so beautiful. Grandmother of grandmothers. Grandma Moon, I send my thoughts, my prayers to you. Again, I pray to you, I pray for you in gratitude for everything you do for us, Nukamis. As I sleep, as my children sleep, as our children sleep, as we sleep, as my granddaughter sleeps. In gratitude, you do this very special thing for us, the people. You put the waters, the rivers, the lakes, the oceans into order for us. We acknowledge this, for water is life. So many of us have forgotten this. I ask you to forgive us for this. We say miigwech to you for this gift you give us. For water is life. We acknowledge this. We come together as the people. We say thank you. Nupkamis, I love you. I say miigwech to you. Grandmother of all grandmothers, Grandma Moon, you are so beautiful in the night. I say thank you for this. I send my prayers, my thoughts to you. I pray to you, I pray for you again and again in gratitude. I say miigwech to you. So our minds, our hearts can be one with this as we come together as the people. I say miigwech to you, great mystery, creator. You have many names. I say miigwech to you. I humble myself. I say miigwech to you. I say thank you for this gift you have given us, the people, life. I say thank you, for there is nothing beyond you, Creator. I say thank you for this beautiful gift you have given us. And I ask for strength. I pray. I ask you to help us in these difficult, challenging times. Help us to clear our minds, to open our hearts just a little more, to work as the people. I say thank you for this, Creator, for there is nothing beyond you, Creator. I say thank you for this gift called life. All my relations, miigwech, 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 miigwech. So thank you for allowing me to say this simple prayer that I try to live by every day of my life. So I want to thank you all for this, for allowing us to come here and to have conversations and celebrate the achievements of all the people who come, who are invited here. But I just say miigwech to you. So thank you again and again from my heart. I say miigwech. Thank you. Miigwech.
Merci, Clay. Miigwech. Thanks, Elder Shirt, for these noble thoughts and for the warmth of your heart and all of us this morning. Alors, j'espère que vous avez reçu, I hope you did receive, as a modest token of our gratitude, the tobacco offering that we are extremely happy to do. And I look forward to another opportunity to meet you beyond the virtual life in the year 2020 or in the next. And I wish you and all your cherished ones a great day and a great end of the year 2020.
Oh, miigwech. Thank you.
You're welcome. This year is a year in which we have lost a lot of people. Nous avons perdu beaucoup de gens dans la pandémie de la COVID-19. Alors, je vous demanderai de faire 1 minute de silence, a minute of silence in the memories of all those we've lost in 2020. Merci beaucoup. La pandémie de la COVID-19 a eu des effets délétères au Canada et partout dans le monde. Elle nous a néanmoins fourni des occasions à nous, les chercheurs, les artistes et les savants, de développer, de promouvoir nos contributions au bien public. As we turn our attention to the ways in which the RSC community has contributed to Canada's response and recovery from the pandemic, we invite the president of the University of Calgary, Ed Macaulay, to offer greetings from the University of Calgary.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. I'm delighted to join the other speakers this morning in welcoming all of you to the Royal Society of Canada's celebration of excellence and engagement. Year after year, this event is a highlight for our research and scholarly communities. And although we cannot gather in the same way to celebrate this year, I know that the spirit of this event is undiminished. The opportunity is as strong as ever to exchange ideas, to explore critical issues in our society, and to highlight the exceptional leadership shown by Canada's scholars, artists, and scientists. This celebration also shines light on two important drivers for research and scholarly excellence. One is the importance of the research enterprise to shape a better future for Canadians and our neighbors around the world. 2020 is the year that the impacts of this work has come to the forefront, and it's wonderful to see the focus on COVID-19 research throughout this year's program. Je suis très fier de la façon que nos chercheurs et nos étudiants ont répondu aux exigences de la pandémie COVID-19. Ils se sont adaptés. En plus, ils ont donné de leur temps à ceux dans le besoin. Second is the power of collaboration and meaningful partnerships. A culture of collaboration is at the core of our identity at the University of Calgary, because we see the greatest success for our scholars when they are connected to supportive, collaborative networks. These points of connection extend beyond our immediate campuses to colleagues across the country, including many years of partnership and strong ties with the Royal Society of Canada. Our university family is proud to provide institutional support for the celebration of excellence and engagement again this year, and to play a role in other programs offered through the Royal Society of Canada. On a personal note, I want to take a moment to congratulate all of the new fellows and members for 2020, including those from the University of Calgary: Clem, Jean, Mark, John, Sandy, and Catherine. We are so proud of all of you. Congratulations. To all of the attendees, I wish you an amazing week ahead, filled with great discussions and engagement. Again, congratulations, mes félicitations et bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup, Ed. Thanks to the President of the University of Calgary. The first day of the 2020 COEE is dedicated to the response of the RSC to the pandemic. The COEE has become the opportunity to demonstrate the ways in which the COVID response exemplifies the multidisciplinary and multi-generation characteristics of the RSC and its position as a rallying point. La Société royale défend des valeurs. Je le disais en introduction, elle promeut un principe d'espoir. Elle se bat pour la science, pour les faits, pour l'exemplarité de nos procédures à la recherche des connaissances, and the response of the RSC to the pandemic is a testament to these values. In this panel, we shall hear from our president, Jeremy McNeil, the president of the Academy of Arts and Humanities, Julia Wright, the chair of the RSC Task Force on COVID-19, Tom Merry, and Essel Jones, member of the task force and a historian of the 1918 Spanish flu. Notre objectif est de vraiment montrer toutes les manières par lesquelles la Société royale a répondu à la pandémie, tout en étant fidèle à ses 130 ans d'expérience dans l'excellence et dans la recherche de la vérité. Alors, Jérémy, à toi la parole, Monsieur le Président.
Merci Guy. Comme président de la Société royale, c'est vraiment un plaisir d'accueillir tout le monde à la première activité de notre COEE. Et je vous remercie, et c'est avec un regret que c'est virtuel, pas vivant. As Guy mentioned, we've been in existence for over 300 years, and it was clearly envisioned as a purpose-driven organization. And this was very clearly pointed out by Dr. Dawson, the very first president of the RSC, who said, in this sense, it must be exclusive in its membership, but inclusive in that it offers its benefit to all. And this, of course, has subsequently been reflected in our bylaw number 2, which basically states to serve Canada and Canadians by recognizing Canada's leading intellectuals, scholars, researchers, and artists, and by mobilizing them in open discussion and debate to advance knowledge, encourage integrated interdisciplinary understanding, and to address issues that are critical to Canada and Canadians. Le début de la Société royale, évidemment, était lié fortement dans les sciences. But as was noted at the very first meeting by the Governor General, Lord Lorne, who was the one that initiated the idea of the Royal Society in Canada, that it should be instrumental and in promoting the completion of the national collections, which he noted were already fairly representative in geology, but afterwards would also include archives, paintings, and objectives illustrating ethnology and all branches of natural history. It is very clear, if you read the history, the RSC took heed in the first 50 years because the RSC played a very significant role in the establishment of our National Museum, the National Archives, and the National Gallery. En plus, c'était impliqué dans les organisations d'autres, la fondation d'autres organisations comme le Conseil national de recherche et notre système des parcs nationaux. On doit aussi noter qu'on avait une diversité même au début, dans cette période, les premières 50 ans, parce qu'on avait les médailles Favel, Pierce et Terrell qui reconnaissent l'excellence en sciences, literature et l'histoire. The RSC has obviously continued in this vein, and one looks at the history in more recent years, and you will see that we've been very active at the national level, where we've been publishing a number of expert panel reports on subjects as diverse as the potential health risks of mobile devices, early childhood development in Canada, ocean biodiversity, end-of-life decisions, Canadian libraries and archives, and many other issues. I think one must also underline the importance of the activity in 2014, where we established the College of New Scholars, Artists, and Scientists, which bring in totally new voices to the cause for the Royal Society. On était aussi actifs dans les scènes internationaux par le G7 et le G20, et aussi avec les organisations parapluies comme the Inter-Academy Partnership et des IANAS, qui est le réseau des académies scientifiques des Amériques. Les résultats des activités seront mentionnés assez souvent dans les différentes activités dans le programme qu'on va avoir pendant cette semaine. In our 2018-2020 strategic plan, a great deal of emphasis was placed on mobilizing the membership and catalyzing new contributions. And I truly believe that what you're going to hear today from the COVID-19 task force shows that the RSC has really been doing that. As with previous expert panels, we've covered a very wide diversity of subjects, thanks to the incredible dedication of a large number of scientists in many, many different fields, scholars of different ages, and I encourage you to attend not only the other sessions that will discuss what the RSC has been doing during this pandemic. On that, I would like to thank you, Guy, very much.
Merci, Jérémy. Julia, à vous.
Merci, Guy. Good morning, everyone. I've been asked to talk about interdisciplinarity in relation to the RSC's COVID-19 task force and another RSC project I'm working on. But first, I'm going to be a humanities scholar for a moment and talk in broad terms about the history of disciplines in Western European culture. There are many other knowledge systems, of course, but it's this one that I think we need to pull apart a little. Advanced education for centuries was fairly standardized, available to a very small elite and grounded in what were called the liberal arts: grammar, rhetoric, logic, geometry, arithmetic, music, and astronomy. Universities largely taught what we would call literature, philosophy, and theology. In the 19th century, as higher education became a little more inclusive, universities grew, embraced the new sciences, and divided into departments. In his report to the Quebec government, known as the Postmodern Condition, Jean-François Lyotard lamented flat networks of areas of inquiry in which universities limit themselves to the transmission of what is judged to be established knowledge, guided by replication rather than the advancement of knowledge, to certifying someone to be a math teacher or a healthcare worker, essentially. But the 19th century fragmentation of the university was never that successful. The course requirements for majors are often cross-disciplinary. Physics will require math, for instance. If you look at the scholarly associations, the Canadian Federation of the Humanities and Social Sciences, you'll find single discipline associations are outnumbered by groups that draw on a range of disciplines to address complex subjects, such as environmental studies, Black Canadian studies, and gender studies. While the disciplinary structure of our universities is influential, especially on our teaching, academics have often found other ways to organize themselves, just as the government bureaucracy has. It is worth thinking about what the RSC is doing with the COVID-19 task force on these terms. The working groups are functioning like government units and scholarly associations rather than university departments. A number of the working groups have topics that line up with government departments, for instance, immigration, health, education, and others that align with scholarly associations like the work on racialized communities. But this traditional interdisciplinarity tends to happen within the humanities or social sciences or sciences. If you study literature, then you've read some philosophy, so it isn't unthinkable to step over that disciplinary barrier. The same for physics and math. But what happens when you put the sciences into conversation with the humanities? For about a year now, I've been working with Carly Kehoe on the RSC Atlantic project on sustainable oceans and sustainable diets. This project started with a humanities concern about the number that scientists use for the amount of fish required per person. This may be a useful number for any number of scientific calculations, and I'm all for easy math. But from a humanities perspective, it raises a lot of questions. What about gender, size, and age differences? What about cultural variations in diets, from fish-intensive diets to diets that include plant-based omegas? A number that is related to human activity is, in the humanities, a movable number. And so we're thinking about how to do that in a way that is healthy, affordable, and culturally appropriate, as well as good for oceans and communities. What the humanities bring to discussions like sustainable oceans is a sense of history and an understanding of culture. Only about 1/10 of the edible species in the waters off the Atlantic coast are caught by the commercial fishery, and they're consistent with a conventional Anglo-American diet. That isn't inevitable. That's culture and history driving certain choices, which then become practices, then regulations, licenses, supply chains, markets, and exports. Lobster, for instance, wasn't considered anything special until canning made it exportable and culture made it fine dining. We now have a group of about 20 scholars in the humanities, social sciences, and the sciences, including interdisciplinary fields such as gender studies and food studies, and you can hear more about this work at a panel tomorrow. My other interdisciplinary project for the RSC is chairing the COVID-19 working group on the future of higher education. Interdisciplinarity gives us a window into other disciplines, as many scholars have noted, but it also requires us to reflect on the methods and assumptions of our home disciplines and the pragmatic rather than necessary divisions between them. Moreover, reflecting on the histories of our disciplines and our institutions demands that we think about the processes of exclusion that have limited the advancement of knowledge and of a just society. Racism, sexism, and ableism, colonialist discourses that even shape our campus structures, as well as high tuition fees and low availability of childcare. An intersectional approach requires that we think of these not as individual barriers, but as stackable ones. I've read enough reports over the last few months to be pretty sure that a program that gathers demographic data to reduce barriers based on racism or sexism is still going to skew admissions towards urban students from families with above average incomes. Taking away one barrier doesn't much help those facing 3 or 4. The lack of diversity is impoverishing our research ecosystem, as the Fundamental Science Review has noted 3 years ago. The term inclusive excellence, adopted and centered by the RSC, recognizes the well-established importance of bringing the rich variety of human experience and identities into scholarship and into our classrooms. We know this, but with a near freeze on faculty hiring and increasing debt burdens on potential graduate students, as well as cultural barriers, change is happening too slowly. The pandemic demands that we think more urgently about this. Let me close by connecting just 2 dots for you. 1, higher education is well established as a vehicle for reducing inequality and improving health outcomes. 2, COVID-19 has been called the inequality virus because of who it harms the most. In Canada, over the last quarter century, tuition has increased steeply, while the ratio of full-time faculty to students has declined in colleges and universities alike, and inequality has risen. Before COVID-19, inequality was already harming our society, communities, families, and individuals, and now the pandemic is making us pay an even higher price for it. This is not inevitable. These 2 are numbers we can change. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Julia. Et au terme des 4 présentations, je reviendrai sur un ou deux points qui ont été développés par nos panélistes. Tom, the ball is in your hands. It's your turn, sir.
Thank you, Guy, and good morning, everybody. The task force on COVID-19 was formed in April of 2020 to operationalize the aspirational goal that was put forward by our president and the board of RSC. And that is that the members of RSC do what they could, or what they can rather, to make Canada a better place coming out of COVID-19 than it was going into it. So a great task, and appropriately termed an aspirational goal. As co-leads, Darren Gilmore and myself decided to divide our tasks into 2 big areas, and later on it became 3. And we initially assembled members of the task force based on what we thought were the key areas in society that have been exposed by COVID-19, which is what this has been very good at, is exposing all the weaknesses in society. And that's how we picked the initial 5 members of the team, along with Darren and myself. Crucial to our operations has been an advisory group consisting of Drs. McNeil and Gaffield and Darren and myself. The short-term pieces that we wanted, or the shorter pieces we termed initially op-eds, but now they're known as informed perspectives, but they are in the nature of op-eds, with about 850 words, although some of those have ranged up to 5,000 words. We now have 42 such pieces on the website, and they are in both English and French, and about half have appeared in the Globe and Mail, and I'll tell you more about that partnership later. Policy documents are in-depth explorations of areas in society that have been exposed or exacerbated by COVID-19. So when we first got started back in April, you will remember that long-term care was really at the epicenter of the wave 1 outbreak of SARS-CoV-2 in Canada at that time. What we were seeing were outbreaks in many provinces in long-term care homes and very high mortality rates amongst the residents of those homes. And as a result of the spread of infection to staff members, care in the facilities were suffering, so much so that in some provinces, assistance was needed from the armed forces. Dr. Sharon Strauss, a member of the task force and a geriatrician, as well as physician-in-chief at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto, assembled a working group on long-term care led by Dr. Carol Estabrooks, a researcher from the University of Alberta. This working group had 10 members from 7 different universities in 6 provinces. 3 are fellows of the Royal Society. In 8 weeks, the group submitted a policy document entitled Restoring Trust, COVID-19 and the Future of Long-Term Care. The document has key recommendations, and these have been placed in front of decision makers as part of the dissemination strategy that the Royal Society has for such documents. And indeed, a key component of what we want to do, especially with these policy documents, is to have scholars give unbiased recommendations based on the evidence that they've found from their research and place those in front of the decision makers so that they will be able to make the best decisions for Canada coming out of COVID-19. Most of you are aware that several provinces have already task forces on long-term care. To date, we've had 7 policy documents submitted and undergo peer review, and these are now on our website. 2 are currently in review, and a number of others, 7 or 8, are in preparation. One of the unique features of the document is that one of the members of our group, Dr. Sean Caulfield from the University of Alberta, is an artist, and he has assembled a team of artists who have chosen with the members of the panels for this particular working group or to illustrate key concepts that are in the document. In addition, Sean is leading a group who will convey in their own work what COVID has meant to artists in the Royal Society and others, and how they see it as affecting Canadian society. However, not everything fits into neat categories, and we found that our policy documents or our activities don't fit into the neatly into the two categories that I just described. For example, the impact of COVID-19 on racialized societies is a series of 11 essays, and they are presented as such. Another one is also a series of essays dealing with Indigenous health and wellness, and the title of that working group is Our Strength is Our Stories. Overall, 276 scholars, about half are members of the Royal Society, have contributed to this work, an amazing level of cooperation. A number of these scholars are early in their career, and this gives them an opportunity to experience the Royal Society, and in turn, it allows the Royal Society to get to know them. What illustrates best the contribution of members of the Royal Society to COVID is the response to 3 questionnaires that were sent to the members in April, early May, and early June. And members were simply asked to indicate, in my view, three of the most pressing societal issues confronting Canada as a response to COVID-19 are. And when these data were analyzed, here were the most common areas that were of concern to members. Equity, inequalities and policy is one. That was chosen by 16.7% of respondents. The economy as a standalone area, 11%. Health and all that involves, including healthcare, planning capacity, concerns for mental and physical health and public health, 10.6% of respondents. Curb the spread, 8.3%. Science and research, 7.9%. Note that concern for a broad society was foremost in members' minds. While evaluation of this effort is ongoing, there is some preliminary evidence of a positive effect. Since publication, the following documents have been downloaded a lot. Long-term care was our first publication in July, leads the way with 8,423 people having downloaded. Civil liberties, 438. Mental health, 679. Open drug discovery, 209. Federal basic income, 656. Representations of science, 454. The next step, and the key one, is how many of these policy recommendations have been adopted and implemented. But that's a little bit down the road. Thank you.
Merci, Tom. Thank you very much. And Esselt, now time for us to hear from you.
Thank you. The RSC task force was from the outset attributing value to having historical perspectives reflected at the table. And I don't think this was necessarily a given. I first published my work on the history of pandemic influenza in the mid-2000s. And despite consistent media and non-academic attention to historical perspectives, especially since SARS and H1N1, as well as the centenary of the global flu pandemic in 2018-19, invitations to interdisciplinary conversations have been more rare. And there is a friction between historical practice and the historical analogies that emerge as societies come to grips with infectious disease. I've had many long and interesting conversations with journalists in the past 8 months, which usually began with the question, what are the lessons of the past? and ended with more complex stories of human experience. As a rule, disease historians are critical of the uses and abuses of pandemic past, as we say. But at the same time, living through this pandemic has, in my experience, required more of me as a historian than just this critical stance. Though history doesn't repeat itself, and being a historian of disease doesn't make me an expert on the present. But I learned quickly this year that I had things to say, and that the public wants to talk about the past in relation to the present. The question is how to go about doing that. Probably many of you know that the main historical narrative of the influenza pandemic at the beginning of the 20th century is that of forgetting. It was referred to for many decades as the forgotten pandemic. My French colleague, Patrick Zilberman, who will present with me later in the day today on our History in the Time of COVID-19 panel, argues that forgetting is only partial. But at the same time, the historian's work is taken up in collective memory only selectively. And this he refers to as the organisation de l'oubli, or organizing oblivion, as he translates it into English. In other words, some aspects of history are remembered, but some are forgotten. And as Patrick also points out, if we can draw on Freud, there is no present without forgetting. So historians must therefore mediate between our own expertise as scholars and broader collective understandings of this relationship between past and present. An experience like the task force is really that idea in action. I chair a working group on the history of public health in Canada, and we're preparing a policy paper that analyzes historical trends in public health approaches since the 19th century. It criticizes our society's rather radical underinvestment in public health and proposes a series of policies to enhance our capacity for prevention. Policy recommendations are not normal activities for historians in general. But taking this long view since the 19th century has also required me to distill significant moments in public health history, the history of infectious disease itself, scientific development, the impact of inequality, colonialism, and racism, including upon public health itself, which engaged in forms of scientific racism, and popular responses to measures such as quarantine or mandatory vaccination. Several of us on the working group are both historians of disease and historians of healthcare, and this has allowed us to mark a relative decline in the emphasis on prevention in Canada in relation to medical treatment, particularly after the introduction of Medicare. After Medicare, public health became the poor second cousin in our system, as Marc Lalonde noted a number of decades ago. There's an intellectual appeal to writing this sort of synthesis because it takes us outside of our own areas of specialization in a productive way and gives the opportunity to shape a larger argument that is grounded not only or primarily in specificity. In the present moment, aspects of my work on disease and healthcare, especially arguments I have made about the inequitable impacts of pandemic disease, have taken on new meaning and resonance. At the same time, the task force has led to other opportunities for collaboration. In the case of our working group on preserving archival records of COVID, I'm learning in greater detail the barriers facing those who are hoping to preserve the societal response to COVID for the historical record. On the economic recovery working group, I've probably learned more than I have contributed. And this group is suggesting significant transformations in aspects of the social safety net and speaking to the now obvious relationship between a strong health, including public health system, and a strong economy. Thank you.
Merci Esselt. Merci à chacun de nos 4 panélistes, à Jérémy, Julia, Tom et Esselt. Jérémy nous a montré que la Société royale a une fondation, une histoire. Nous avions donc une capacité organisationnelle en lien avec notre tradition pour entreprendre les réflexions en lien avec la pandémie. Julia Wright nous a rappelé également les dimensions interdisciplinaires et la nécessité de la justice intergénérationnelle. Et nous, les membres, les amis, les collègues de la Société royale, avons une responsabilité envers les prochaines générations, envers celles et ceux qui arrivent dans les milieux de la recherche, et Julia a insisté là-dessus. Merci à Tom de nous avoir montré comment, de manière organisée, cohérente et enthousiaste, le groupe de travail de la Société royale a disséminé ses travaux, ses réflexions et entend également les répandre dans notre communauté, mais également auprès du public éclairé. Merci finalement à Essel de nous avoir rappelé que notre planète, notre univers, notre espèce a connu des pandémies semblables il y a un siècle et auparavant, et donc d'avoir rappelé comment l'histoire peut nous aider à relever les défis contemporains. Mr. President, you wouldn't be happy with the selection of the moderator you've chosen, you and Darren Gilmore's team for today, if I did not add that the Royal Society does not live alone in the field of our scientific network. It lives with the Federation for the Humanities and the Social Sciences, and it shall have its next Congress from the University of Alberta in the spring of 2021. Et bien sûr, la Société royale vit aussi avec la merveilleuse équipe de l'ACFAS qui va organiser son prochain congrès et notamment des réflexions sur la COVID à l'Université de Sherbrooke et à Bishop en mai 2021. The Royal Society is aware of the complexities of the pandemic and hopes and will help its relative partners, all its partners, to get through it. As we reach the closing of our first morning panel for the week, let me ask to our panelists the following questions, and we'll go in the same order. Jeremy, Julia, Tom, and Essel. What are the next steps in enhancing the engagement with the public and the mobilization of the community? Jeremy, you go first.
Merci, Guy. Évidemment, les activités vis-à-vis le COVID-19 vont continuer, malheureusement pour une certaine période de temps, c'est sûr. We are actually so encouraged by the response of the community to the requests to participate in the COVID-19 task force. We're already, while not finishing with the COVID-19, we're already moving forward, looking at areas related to climate change, biodiversity, etc., as well as interacting with Let's Talk Science, an organization where we will be reaching out and getting involved through this organization with the Royal Society. I would also like to say that one of the things we're really looking forward to doing is when we get back to face-to-face meetings is extending the activities of the Royal Society in the regions, making sure that we involve not only more and more members of the college and the fellows, but also involving with our communities throughout the region and the public to reach out to ensure that we are hearing what they would like from us and doing the best we can to ensure that we deliver on our promises. Thank you.
Merci, Jérémy. Julia.
Thank you, Guy. We're facing a number of plagues, inequality, gender-based violence, homelessness, and now a pandemic. Higher education and research are tools for finding solutions for us, as well as offers a solution in and of itself through better individual outcomes. But we are not supporting this generation as ours was supported. Declining public funding for higher education has reduced the hiring of full-time continuing faculty, even as enrollments have increased. As a result, far too many highly qualified PhDs to graduate this century have been underemployed as part-time faculty or left research and teaching altogether. This is not only impairing Canadian research, but also our capacity to collaborate with the international research community. Bluntly, you can't help develop a 5-year partnership with colleagues in Europe if you're on a 4-month contract. The work we've been doing on sustainable diets and sustainable oceans is rooted in global research, including by the UN and the European Union. We can learn much from what is being done around the world. But at the end of the day, we need the research capacity here to find solutions that will work here. Our ecosystems are different. Our political system, laws, languages, and obligations under reconciliation are also unique. International graduate students, continuing full-time faculty, and organizations like the RSC are all vital to building bridges to a global research network that can help us here at home and through which we can in turn help communities around the world. We need to start thinking about what we're doing in the public education sector and think about this in terms of intergenerational equity. We had a well-funded, accessible system, and we need to do better in ensuring that for the next generation. Thank you.
Merci, Julia. Tom?
Thank you, Guy. So I'm going to go off script for a moment and bring to your attention that you will all have received another survey to complete, much like the ones we sent 3 times previously. And I do hope that you will complete that this week. It has given us valuable information in the past and will do so in the future and guide what we do. I'm going to stick with COVID-19. It's a moving target, and there are several issues that we need to consider for the future. I think the first one is measuring effectiveness of not only what we've been doing, but what others have been doing. And lots of organizations and governments have been working on recommendations from COVID-19. Unfortunately, our past has been littered with reports, wonderful documents, and they're great at gathering dust. I don't know what will happen to the electronic versions of those, but they won't gather dust, but they probably won't be any more effective. What we have to do, and I think one of the things that we haven't sorted out yet, but it's something for the advisory group to think about, is how do we go forward and ensure that many of the recommendations that have been made are accepted and put into action. I don't really have the answer to that, but thinking about it, getting in front of the public, and making sure that these recommendations are acted on is the key. Closely followed in that vein is the fact that, assuming and hoping that we successfully conquer this pandemic in the next 6 to 8 months with the vaccines that are on the horizon, is that we can't forget that another pandemic will come. And we can't do what we've done in the past, which is do things for a while and then forget all the things we've put in place to deal with pandemics. So we need to remember that. The last piece that I wanted to touch on briefly, and your closing remarks, and talk about our partnership with the Globe and Mail and with Le Devoir. That's a new venture, also one that needs evaluation. What works, what doesn't work. Thank you very much.
Merci, Tom. Esselt?
Thank you. The RSC has been making a tremendous push on disseminating the work of the COVID-19 task force. And I think it helps that the task force has drawn in such a large number of scholars, both from within the RSC and from beyond. So it's opened its doors to both expertise, but also to greater representation of racialized voices. And I think this is not only the right thing for us to do, but it is also essential for the project's relevance. Health inequity, particularly racial inequity, is defining both the pandemic's impact in Canada and our social responses to it. And the extent to which we're engaging with a movement for greater social justice and health equity, we're able to reach a larger, wider audience through a number of different outlets, from the mainstream press, but of course also through social media and an online presence. So I think this big tent that the RSC has attempted to create, and its greater efforts to have more inclusive voices, are going to pay off for us in terms of the relevance of our work. Thank you.
Merci, Esselt. I'm tempted to ask you, as I at the beginning had said that the RSC was about a principle of hope for a better future in Canada and around the world. So with a note of optimism in this year of the pandemic, anything in 30, 40 seconds that has made you more optimistic about either your profession, the scientific community, the country you live in, something enlightening for our attendees who are embarking upon this great week of the celebration of excellence and engagement. Jeremy.
Well, as I've already mentioned, I think the thing that has really impressed me is the way that the diversity of scholars from so many disciplines have stepped forward to engage in this activity, showing that we actually have a community of scholars, regardless of discipline, that are willing to step up to the plate and do an amazing job for Canada and all Canadians. That really did make me a very happy person.
Merci, Jérémy. Julia. Your mic, Julia.
Sorry about that. It seems to me that what we've learned from this pandemic is that collective action is possible and collective action can change the world. As I said, we're facing a number of crises, and we can add to the list climate change. And the fact that we can all take small steps to protect everyone, like wearing a mask, washing our hands more often, staying home when we can, those kinds of things, it is showing us that we have great power as individuals when we work together. And I also see a lot of hope in the fact that we are talking a lot more in the public eye about the value of science and even nitty-gritty details like the importance of peer review. I find that all incredibly promising and hopeful.
Merci, Julia. Tom.
Okay, thank you. So every dark cloud has a silver lining. Sometimes it's hard to see it. But I think with this pandemic, what it's opened up is an opportunity to change some of the things that have not been right in society for a long time. And I do think policymakers are aware of that. And I do think they will make the right decisions.
Merci, Tom. Essel.
Epidemic disease outbreaks often have that kind of duality to them. On the one hand, they create opportunities for social division and conflict, but they also create opportunities for social solidarity. And as a pandemic has gone on, I've had different moments when I wondered which had the upper hand. But I do think there are, like Julia says, opportunities here for greater moments of social solidarity. And specifically what we've been working on in the public health working group is maybe we finally have the chance to make the investments in public health and health equity that people have been talking about for decades, and we shouldn't miss that opportunity.
Merci, merci Essel. Alors, de mon côté, je vous dirais, I'm extremely happy as a political scientist that our federal and provincial leaders have met more often in 2020 than at any other occasion in the past quarter of a century. But there's still work to be done for the RSC and our decision makers, as they still don't write reports about these meetings. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we can remain optimistic about the capacity of our system. Merci beaucoup donc à toutes et tous d'avoir participé à cette séance. Monsieur McNeil, you are our president, so you have the last word for about 1 minute.
Merci Guy. J'aimerais remercier particulièrement Elder Clayton Shirk pour l'introduction au début. Aussi à toi Guy pour avoir accepté d'être chair de cette session. And my colleagues who were members of this panel, thank you very much. I hope everybody through this has realized that the Royal Society is an active and meeting its mandate. And I would remind you that if we ever call upon you, we would really love to hear you say yes when we contact you. So on that, I wish you all a very good week and enjoy the COEE. And next year, join us in Montreal for the live one. Thank you.
Merci tout le monde. Bonne journée, bonne célébration de l'excellence et de l'engagement. Bravo à tous les nouveaux membres et à tous les nouveaux fellows de la société et aux nouveaux membres du collège. Bonne semaine à toutes et tous. Be safe, be prudent, and we'll get through this. Merci beaucoup.